Thank you to those that are tuning in on the Facebook streaming with the City of Greater Bendigo, and we'll get on with our meeting. So if I could have everyone stand, please. I acknowledge that the City of Greater Bendigo is on Dja Dja Wurrung and Taungurung country. I would like to acknowledge and extend my appreciation of the Dja Dja Wurrung people, the traditional owners of the land that we are standing on today. Today we pay our respects to leaders and elders past, present and emerging, for they hold the memories, the traditions, the culture and the hopes of all the Dja Dja Wurrung people. We express our gratitude in the sharing of this land, our sorrow for the personal, spiritual and cultural costs of that sharing, and our hope that we may walk forward together in harmony and in the spirit of healing. Most gracious God, grant that having put aside all personal interests and bias, we use the authority entrusted to us to enable us to provide good and fair government for the citizens of Greater Bendigo. Amen. Again, welcome everyone that's here, and particularly for those that are at home listening online or through Phoenix FM. So we have some apologies. We have Councillor James Williams, that's an apology. And we have a leave of absence of Councillor Mel Petherbridge. So I have someone to move. Thank you, Councillor Fife, and seconded Councillor Metcalfe. All those in favour? Against? Carried. I now move to suspension of standing orders. I'm someone to move. Thank you, Councillor Flack. Seconded Councillor Emon. All those in favour? Against? Carried. As we have done always in this term of council, we come to our community recognition section, and I would like to read a message out to our community. We live in interesting times. As someone said to me today, it's very uncharted waters that we are in. And I would like to thank our residents for their cooperation and understanding. As you can appreciate, the advice around COVID-19, coronavirus, is changing constantly, and new advice is being received daily from state and federal leaders and health officials. Council is doing its best to respond to this advice, which is why our seats are further apart tonight around the council table and also in the gallery. We are practising social distancing to help limit the spread of the disease. We are also live streaming tonight's council meeting via the city's Facebook page, so you can see and hear us, while we also continue to broadcast via Phoenix FM over the radio and online. In response to the Victorian Government declaring a month-long state of emergency, the City of Greater Bendigo has closed facilities run by its Bendigo Venues and Events Unit. This includes the Capitol and Alumbra Theatres, Dudley House, the Engine Room, the Town Hall, aside from holding the council meetings. Libraries have also closed from today, but our Visitor Information Centre, Bendigo Art Gallery and pools remain open for the time being, but this could change very easily. You may have noticed the presence of security tonight. This is to help enforce social distancing and to convey information to residents that our preference is for you to watch or listen from home. In regards to April's council meeting and how it will be run, we will continue to monitor advice provided by state and federal governments and health officials and hold future meetings in line with this advice. I've received many calls, texts and emails in regards to what council is doing to help our community during this time. I was part of a meeting today with business, health and community leaders to discuss how we are responding as a community to coronavirus. We are hoping to meet weekly and will share various information relating to how residents can manage their own health and wellbeing, ensuring that they are also communicating the best ways to support business and how businesses can access the financial support they need, while also ensuring we look after our more vulnerable residents. On to other news. We were very excited to win the gold at the Qantas Australian Tourism Awards in the Destination Marketing category for our promotion of the Tutors to Windsors campaign. The winning campaign attracted 75,000 people to Bendigo, which was the result of a collaboration across the tourism industry and with Bendigo Art Gallery. Highlights of the campaign included a royal pop-up tram at the Piazza in Roslyn Park, the royal train from Castlemaine to Bendigo, a giant Westminster Lego display at the Bendigo Visitor Centre, the Royal Street Art and Royal Accommodation packages. So I think a round of applause for our award. I would also like to acknowledge the finalists in the Bendigo District Cricket Association and Emu Valley Cricket Leagues and congratulate all teams that made it to that point. I believe Emu Creek is deciding tonight about the future of its competition, and it is a real shame that we're now seeing grassroots sport cancelled, although we can all understand why. I would also like to acknowledge that Bendigo was rated very highly in the top 3 out of a RMIT study on livable regional cities across Australia. I think there were 21 regional cities and we were rated in that top 3. So we all know why our city is most livable, and it means something to each and every one of us in a different way. So that was really good news as well. I think we can all look forward to the time when it becomes business as usual for our community. But in the meantime, what we ask is that you stay safe, ensure your personal hygiene regime of washing hands is regular, be kind to each other at the supermarket, and make good, informed decisions with health advice that we are receiving. So with that, I'll close the community section of the meeting. We'll now move to public question time.
Council will allow up to 30 minutes for public question time for questions on any matter except for planning items that are on the agenda tonight. Those who have a question are asked to come forward to the rope barrier, state their name and address and direct the question to the Mayor. I also invite those in the auditorium downstairs who wish to ask a question to make their way upstairs now. We have removed the microphone and lectern to avoid any risks of contamination, so please speak clearly in a loud voice. The Mayor will repeat your question into the microphone for the benefit of viewers and listeners. A reminder that there is to be no preamble, introduction or comments, so please just ask one question. We'll start with the number of questions that we received during the week. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Jess. And we did receive a number of questions that came in up until 3 o'clock this afternoon. There was a couple of later questions that came in that missed that time frame, but we will actually respond to those people as well in the next day or two. So I'll begin with those, and then when we finish, depending on the time, we'll work through any others that want to ask from the floor. So I'll just go through. The first one is from Karen and Kieran Flynn in Howard Street, Epsom. The question is, did the Council take into consideration the EPA's separation guidelines when approving the development of Acacia Park Estate? Most especially as some of these blocks are less than 100 metres from the treatment plant boundary. To Karen and Kieran, if they're listening, answering the question will require some considerable research into the planning history of the land and what guidelines applied at the time of the subdivision. Given the planning permit was issued in 1995-96, EPA guideline 1518 with recommendation separation distances for industrial residual air emissions was released in 2013. So it was well after the estate was actually established. Given the research time involved, City officers will provide a written response to this question. The next one I have here is from Alan Howard at Candlebark Court in Longley. And the question is second valuation for Littleton Terrace office. The question is, I understand the Valuer General of Victoria will provide a valuation on the land only aspect at the city's main Littleton Terrace site. As I believe this is likely to be considered by Council via a report on the sale of land by May 2020. I expect a good many other ratepayers and citizens want to know whether, and if not, will the City undertake commissioning a second independent commercial valuation, ensuring that is done by a valuer with established knowledge and experience of Bendigo, to ensure ratepayers get the best value for their prime CBD site at Littleton Terrace. Alan, in response to your question, in the report on Council's involvement in the Bendigo GovHub project that was presented in February 2019 Council meeting, it was outlined that the Valuer General of Victoria would oversee the valuation process for the Council-owned site in Littleton Terrace at Bendigo. As part of this prescribed process, the Valuer General obtains 2 separate valuations. In addition, and to further protect the interests of the City, Council officers have obtained an additional independent valuation. The valuation information will all be used by the Valuer General of Victoria to determine the value of the land. Third question tonight is on GovHub, and it comes from Carolyn Hughes in Bullock Street. Given the fact that no decision has been reached by Council on the sale of the ratepayer land for the proposed GovHub project, can Council advise if their premature actions have breached any legislation or legal responsibilities or governance compliance? Carolyn, at the February 2018 Council meeting, Council resolved to become a tenant in the Bendigo GovHub project and provided in principle approval to sell the Littleton Terrace site to enable the development to proceed. This was and continues to be a clear signal to the community, organisation and Victorian Government of Council's intention to be part of the Bendigo GovHub. In preparation for the project, the organisation has taken a number of steps, including relocating the Customer Service Centre to our Hopetoun Street office and relocating a number of staff from our Littleton Terrace offices to office accommodation in Fountain Court that is leased on a temporary basis. I presume these are the changes that the question is referring to. So none of these constitutes a breach of legislation or legal requirement, nor is Council aware of other breaches as part of implementing the Council decision. Council also provided in principle approval to sell the Littleton Terrace site to enable the development to proceed. In the Council report, Council committed to sell the land in accordance with the obligations as set out in the Local Government Act 1989. Council remains committed to this. The lease at Fountain Court has an exit clause which will enable the Council to relocate to its previous office should the project not proceed. The feedback from staff within the organisation on the move has been extremely positive. Next question is about GovHub. In March 2020, 83% of over 600 people surveyed in a Bendigo Monthly newspaper poll said that it would be a waste of assets if our existing council buildings were demolished in order to build a new GovHub. Could the City please advise when they will consult and ask their residents if they want the CBD Littleton Terrace council site sold and the main council offices demolished? If not, why not? If the City believes that they have consulted on the sale of our council assets, please provide the dates, times and events held to inform, engage and most importantly gauge residents' views on the sale of our council assets. Lindsay Sargent Huntley. Lindsay, the City has consulted with residents on a number of occasions, beginning in 2013 with the independent review, where Recommendation 11 recommended the City advocate and plan for consolidating its offices as a high priority to enable a high-performance culture, increased organisational efficiencies and improve the customer experience. The community was extensively consulted during the independent review process and the Council adopted in principle all 69 recommendations. The City interviewed 120 people and reviewed 129 submissions. In 2018, the City consulted with professional consultants to perform a full analysis of options. On the 27th of July 2019, a community design consultation day was coordinated by Development Victoria and held in the Bendigo Town Hall, inviting the community to attend and provide feedback to the proposed GovHub. In addition, there have been consultants with several community, business and other stakeholder groups about the project GovHub and Council's Audit and Risk Committee. Councillors have also discussed this project with many residents, including yourself, Lindsay, and this includes receiving and responding to 23 of your letters. The articles in the Bendigo Monthly about the Bendigo GovHub are paid advertorials. Council has not been offered the opportunity to provide input or facts to these articles. I would also state that the survey is not a validated survey. There is strong community support for the Bendigo GovHub project and the other exciting developments in the northern end of the city precinct. The next question is actually from Julian. Julian, did you want to ask that yourself or were you happy for me? Thank you. Yeah.
Councillors, have you considered that to maintain the integrity and independence of local government in Bendigo, it may not be appropriate to house both local government and state government offices in the same building?
Thanks very much, Julian, for your question. And Council has considered all aspects of co-location with state government and have also engaged the independent expert advice of consultants of PwC on this. There has been no issues of conflict or integrity concerns raised. There are many benefits for our community and organisation of co-locating with key staff from the Victorian State Government. Certainly council would be on one floor and not mixed within the other floors in that building. They will certainly have meetings together where appropriate on mutual information that will make those discussions much easier and more convenient for our community. The enhanced services for our customers and improved efficiencies for our organisation, the revitalisation of the city centre and the additional jobs for our economy, as we know, have all been considered in this. PwC valued the productivity increases from this project at $16.1 million and also assessed the project would inject $131 million into the local economy. A large proportion of this will be through construction jobs. Our local firms and tradespeople will be well placed to obtain work from these contracts, and we will continue to work with our local businesses and with the state government to advocate for local content in this and other projects. Council officers participated in a contractor forum in July last year, showcasing the pipeline of upcoming projects, including the Bendigo GovHub. There was strong interest in this, with over 200 contractors in attendance and represented. There was strong interest last year. There is now of vital importance that these projects continue. The combined total of around $500 million of the investments will underpin the rebuilding of confidence in our local community, particularly after what we're seeing in recent weeks. This will be easily important as we support our businesses to recover from the current economic challenges associated with COVID-19. Thanks, Julian. Our next question on the proposed GovHub comes from Alan Stevens at Eaglehawk. One-stop shop. Could the city please clearly indicate and measure in dollar terms the expected benefits to accrue to ratepayers and the City of Greater Bendigo employees of a so-called one-stop shop to the proposed GovHub, and does this mean some staff will no longer be required due to the efficiencies gained? Thanks, Alan, for your question. There are many benefits for our community, our economy and our customers of the Bendigo GovHub project, many of which have been quantified by the independent consultants PwC, which I mentioned earlier, that provided advice to Council. In addition to the important uplift in economic activity for Bendigo, the Bendigo GovHub will deliver enhanced levels of accessibility, service and faster outcomes for our customers, opening up offices currently leased by Council to other businesses and agencies, improved quality workplace to increase the attraction and retention of staff, productivity increases forecast at $16.1 million, an improved workplace for our staff who have endured many years of substandard accommodation. And the Bendigo GovHub will enable the city to be even more efficient and customer focused in the way we deliver our services and our community. I think I'd also like to add there, in terms of the outputs of from electricity and certainly infrastructure costs, we know that the building will be built to around about the 2019 building regulations that have just been released last year, which again brings it to actually the highest standard building that will be in Bendigo. Number 7 is the suspension of major decisions, and this comes from Peter Vasinic in Kennedy Street, Bendigo. As a state of emergency has now been declared in Victoria to combat COVID-19, and with the possibility of further escalation measures being imposed, will Council lead and exercise governance for the community, ratepayers and all residents by suspending any decisions that relate to the sale of land for the government hub until such time as this health crisis has passed? Where residents and ratepayers can again have the opportunity to meet as a community to formulate and respond to Council on this matter, as is their right. Thanks, Peter, for your question. Council is continuing to review its operations and decision-making while we prepare for and respond to COVID-19. We are identifying key positions, key functions and key projects, and will continue to do this. And again, I'll reiterate, this project will be especially important as we support our businesses to recover from the current economic challenges associated with COVID-19. We now move on to another question, and this is regarding the Golden Square Pool. And I will add that this is actually on the agenda tonight. However, I will read the question and answer, but you must bear in mind that it will be obviously debated later in the agenda at 3.2. There is 3 questions that are very similar. I'll read each 3 and then I'll give a response. The first one is from Aaron Bentley. If the lease of the pool is extended, what funding will be available for the broader Golden Square sporting and user groups to keep up with other clubs in the region and cater for women's sport, the fastest growing worldwide? Matt Christie question was, what impact will the pool have with the participation of sport in the Golden Square community? And another question from Adele Trollope, what impacts will this decision have on the participation of sport in the Golden Square community? As it currently stands, the club are already struggling with numbers, recruitments of players due to the facilities that are currently there and lack of space. Thanks Aaron, Matt and Adele for your questions. The number and value of requests for funding significantly outweigh the available budget each year across all categories of expenditure, from bridges to sporting facilities. Our adopted community plan includes the strategic priority of wellbeing and fairness, which is utilised to determine the merit of projects to be included in the annual budget. Golden Square Recreation Reserve and all tenant club projects will be considered alongside all other requests. Regardless of the decision Council makes tonight, it is clear that there will be disappointment from a group within the community who are unable to grow. The next question comes, which is a Golden Square Sporting Precinct, and the question comes from Scott Trollope in Spring Gully Road, Quarry Hill. When will there be anything done about the extremely dangerous and outdated cricket training facilities at Golden Square? Thanks Scott for your question. And the City has been progressively renewing and upgrading cricket facilities in Greater Bendigo over recent years, and Golden Square are one of the higher priorities for the upgrade. Unfortunately, the current facility is relatively small and utilises a run from the oval, which creates maintenance issues. Ideally, when upgraded, this facility would be enlarged to cater for the participant growth and relocated off the oval area. The master plan process has identified the difficulty in achieving this within the small reserve without impacting on another user, and again demonstrates that regardless of Council's decision, a user group will be negatively impacted. Our next question is Golden Square Sporting Facilities, and the question comes from Ian Callett. Can Council please explain why one community facility, the Golden Square Pool, which has limited season and a duplicated service at two other close-by Council facilities, should have an extension of 4 years to arrangements? My particular concern is female participants in football, netball and cricket are provided extremely substandard provision of facilities with no genuine attempt being made to address this by Council. Why are you holding back female participation in sport? Thanks Ian for your question. The proposal to extend by 4 years is pragmatic. Council is considering multiple master plan options for the reserve, with each having an impact on multiple user groups. It is intended that 4 years is a reasonable amount of time to A, complete the master plan with broader community consultation, B, undertake design and approval processes, and C, seek funding support. It is anticipated that work could commence to implement the outcome at the end of the 4-year period. In response to Council holding back from female participation in sport, it is necessary to point out that Council has invested significantly in female-friendly facilities during this term and the previous term of Council. In approximately the last 8 years, there's been additional change rooms at the Strathdale Park for female umpires at the Dick Conroy Pavilion. New netball change rooms at the Canterbury Park, dedicated adjacent to the courts. New change rooms at the Epsom Huntley Recreation Reserve, 8 in total. Change rooms within the stadium at the Eaglehawk Soccer Club, Truscott Reserve. Renovation of the Caravan Park amenities at Dow Park in preparation for the construction of 2 netball courts beside this, nearing completion. Umpires change rooms at Golden Square. 2 more female change rooms at Spring Gully Soccer Club, Stanley Avenue. Bendigo Stadium expansion, which includes change rooms for external netball courts. Morris College, which includes netball and umpire change rooms. Umpire change rooms at Canterbury Park. Change rooms and pavilion at Garden Gully to cater for hockey in the region. Change rooms at the QEO netball courts. Upgraded change rooms at the QEO to be family friendly. Female friendly change rooms and umpire room at Dow Park Kangaroo Flat. And extensions and alterations to female friendly rooms at the Barrack Reserve in Heathcote. Current projects are the design of a pavilion at Harry Trott Recreation Reserve, which will include netball and umpire change rooms, design of change room upgrades at Club Court Strathfields A to be female friendly, upgrades to Huntley change rooms to be female friendly, and more. So I think as you can see from that, Ian, there's been a substantial amount of money that's been expended on female sport and sport more broadly. Another question about the Golden Square Pool, and this comes from Sam Kane, the president of the Golden Square Pool Inc. And Sam, you're here tonight. Would you like to ask that question? Thanks very much, Sam, for your question. So I'll read that question again. Does the City of Greater Bendigo still have confidence in the Golden Square Pool Link's management ability? And why hasn't the City ever raised or detailed to me, as in Sam, as the President of the Golden Square Pool Link, supposed management concerns despite 7 years of successful community operation and lease renewals from the City? Sam, Council does have the confidence that the Golden Square Pool Link are able to manage the swimming pool, and the intention of the proposing council undertake maintenance at the site is to reduce the workload of volunteers and to ensure legislated essential safety measures are met. Next question is the Bendigo Swimming Pool's Golden Square Pool, and it comes from Andrew Penner. Why is it taking so long for the completion of the new aquatic strategy? Andrew's here. Thanks, Andrew. Did you want to come forward? I'm sorry, I've read your question out. Yeah, happy to just... Yeah, thank you. So, Andrew, there is one question per person, and your question is, why is it taking so long for the completion of the new aquatic centre strategy? Thank you. Yep, good on you. So, I'm happy, Craig, if you want to take it, but the aquatic strategy has progressed, not as quickly as we would have liked, but as you would well appreciate, there are 13 sites to be considered. It was 2010 when it was last done, each with their own complexities and very significant building and operational cost implications, and that certainly has changed even in the 10 years since that was first written. Council has progressed the options for the Golden Square Recreation Reserve and is considering Golden Square Swimming Pool tonight. This work has contributed towards development of a draft strategy, which is expected to be considered as a draft by Council in the coming months. Thanks, Andrew. Ken Hamilton. No. So Ken has a question and is from Shelburne. Can Council please advise how they are legally entitled to carry out fire damage to the Golden Square Pool when under the lease Golden Square Pool is responsible for all repairs and maintenance and have offered to complete the repairs themselves using local tradespeople and volunteer labour? Thanks, Ken, for your question. This land is vested in Council from the Crown. The building damaged is owned by the Greater City of Bendigo, who insure the asset. The City has the right to undertake these repairs, which, if undertaken, will not only repair the building but will modernise it to meet modern building requirements. Next question is about the Golden Square Pool, and it comes from Paul Abbott in Pioneer Drive, Maiden Gully. If the pool remains open, how will the Council assist the football and netball clubs to cater for the increase in female participation? There has been initial meetings to begin a master plan for Wade Street Precinct, and if the pool remains open, this will further inhibit growth in female sport for the Golden Square community. As it stands at the moment, the female facilities at Wade Street are unacceptable. Thanks, Paul, for your question. If the pool continues for a further 4 years as proposed in the recommendation, Council will utilise this time to finalise the master plan with the broader community, design the priority infrastructure and seek funding to construct it. It is obvious that regardless of Council's decision tonight, there will be a user group who are negatively impacted. Barbara Lomas. I know I saw Barbara downstairs, but she may not have come in. So Barbara from Golden Square. It is proposed in this evening's recommendation for the Golden Square Pool Link to have an automatic closure clause for costs over $20,000. Do other local swimming pools who have the City of Greater Bendigo's do other local swimming pools who have the City of Greaters Bendigo responsible for their asset maintenance have this clause? And if not, why is Golden Square Pool being singled out? So Barb, Golden Square Swimming Pool is the only facility with this clause. This clause does not automatically close the pool, but rather it reflects that investment in a single repair replacement above this value is a significant investment for consideration by council. Another question here from Golden Square Pool, and it's from Scott Wilkinson. Scott's from Thistle Street. With the COVID-19 concerns being more pressing than any other, and given some agenda points for tonight's meeting have been shifted from their original publicised date of April 2020 without notice, so Scott's obviously referring to the Golden Square Pool agenda item, would it be prudent for council to shift the decision about the future of the Golden Square Swimming Pool to a later date, which would also allow consultation to be sought from all relevant users? Thanks, Scott, for your question. Consultation throughout the master plan process has made it clear that regardless of the decision that council makes, there will be a user group who will be disappointed. While previous council resolutions proposed a response in April, this report has been developed and is available for a decision earlier. And I do know that the groups met up until May last year, and I think there was communication in August last year saying that the master plan couldn't go ahead until council actually made a decision. Golden Square Master Plan, the question from Brad Perro. Taylor Street, Ascot. It is the feeling of all user groups that an amicable consensus can be reached between user groups about how the land surrounding the Golden Square Pool can best be used as a whole community space. Why have council or its representatives not convened a meeting with all user groups to discuss this since May 2009? Brad, as I just mentioned, there has been a final meeting in May 2009, but user groups were notified in August. I think that there was no further activities, and then there was a recent meeting at the beginning of March. Another question from Julie Dillon, Golden Square Pool. Hard-working volunteers from a range of clubs and user groups, football and netball, cricket, bowls, croquet and the swimming pool have been looking forward to a decision be delivered regarding the future use of the area. This plan was to be delivered in April 2020. Can council honour this initial pledge and hold this agenda point over until the April meeting of council and conduct the promised collaboration from all user groups? Thanks, Julie, for your question. While this was previously to be considered in April, during consultation with other user groups, it became clear that the master plan, as I said, could not accommodate all existing user groups on the small site, and the decision regarding the Golden Square Pool was necessary from council. So that's all of the written questions that I have, and we have about 4 minutes. So I would ask, we can extend for about 10 minutes if anyone else has a question that they would like to ask. I certainly don't want to stop that opportunity. Thank you. If you come forward and just say your name, thank you. I'll get you to speak up, Max, so that I'll be able to repeat them.
My name is Max Grant. I'm the president of the Golden Square Cricket Club. I live in Hull Street in Golden Square. I guess my question it does revolve around the recommendation.
Thanks very much, Max. So for listeners tuning in on Phoenix and also streaming, Max's question was, he was asking how council can make a decision regarding the Golden Square Pool when he feels that all stakeholders haven't been given that consultation through that process. President of the Golden Square Cricket Club. Did I capture that all right for you, Max? Yeah. So, Max, I think you would also agree there's probably been responses that I've read out there. There has been, as I said, the master planning work that's happened with groups with various scenarios for that site in Golden Square. It has come to a point where the work has been done and there has been interaction. As I said, the last meeting was May 2019. There was communication around August 2019 to say that it really was awaiting Council's decision. There still is more work to be done, and the information there is felt that, as the recommendation said tonight, and it will be debated, that there was an extension as the recommendation so that work could be done in consultation with the community. Thanks, Max. No, thank you. Thanks very much, Max. Any other questions? As I said, the Golden Square Pool is on item 3.2 on the agenda, and I'm sure councillors will discuss that in more detail.
Move resumption of standing orders.
Thank you, Councillor Fife, to resume standing orders, and Councillor Flack seconded. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We now move to Councillor Oldham, who's doing her report this evening because Councillor Williams is not present, so I'll hand to Councillor Oldham. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. This may be the last time for a while that councillors can rattle off a long list of community events that we've attended. Of course, this is due to COVID-19. And in preparing these monthly councillor reflections, it always highlights the huge range of activities that occur in our community, some of which we're able to support and participate in. But in the near future, we'll need to look at other ways to support groups online, and via other technologies will be one way. So in the past month, there's been a few openings that I have attended, one being the opening of the Overview exhibition at Dudley House, along with Councillors Fife from Petherbridge. This space continues to be a great support to emerging and local artists. Another launch was the exhibition launch at the Bendigo Post Office Gallery for the history of the Bendigo Easter Fair. How lucky are we to be able to see up close artefacts of our history and shared experiences of the past. The 150th Easter Fair celebration may have been deferred, but I'm certain that next year's event will now be even bigger than was planned for this year. There was the 1.6 billion Ways to be Muslim photographic exhibition launch at the Bendigo Goldfields Library. It was a partnership event between the Library, City of Greater Bendigo and the Bendigo Islamic Association. It has support from the City and Multicultural Arts Victoria. Credit to Mustafa Al-Rawi, a member of the Bendigo Islamic Association, and Council's Community Harmony Project Officer, Philip Walker. It aims to support positive storytelling and community engagement in the lead up to the construction of the mosque and the Muslim Community Centre in Bendigo. While the planned school events may be uncertain, it will ultimately allow our community to reflect on our commitment to diversity and inclusion. Artist Peter Dawes also spoke powerfully about his Aussie poster project, and his reflections are covered in his book Poster Boy, which I think we may all now have more time to read. There were several events this month. I spoke at the Boomerang Bags final celebration. After 5,400 bags were made in Bendigo. While the initial project has paused, there's a legacy that's assisted us to better replace plastic and to contribute to keeping waste from landfill in Bendigo. There's an estimate of some tens of thousands of single-use bags being kept from landfill, plus over 1,000 kilograms of fabric saved from landfill as well. So congratulations goes to Leanne and Loretta and the many volunteers involved in the past couple of years for all their efforts. I launched the draft gender equity strategy at the Women's Health Loddon Mallee International Women's Day breakfast. This strategy provides a shared vision to enhance gender equity in our community by providing a framework outlining structural, relational and attitudinal changes aimed at fairness and equal opportunity for all. The Zonta International Women's Day dinner had a terrific speaker, Dr. Airlie Chapman. She spoke about STEM, science, technology, engineering and maths, and women in technology and design. Congratulations also go to Nicole Ferry, former editor of the Bendigo Advertiser, for being named the 2020 Woman of Achievement by Bendigo Zonta on the evening for her championing of gender equity. La Trobe O Week is always a good event. And there are many enthusiastic new students at La Trobe who are again welcomed this year, and we wish them well in their studies. It may be delivered in a non-traditional manner for some time, but I'm sure they will all progress satisfactorily. There was the Youth Council elections for Mayor and Deputy Mayor, and congratulations goes to Ryan Peterson and Billy Taylor, and we wish you great success in the coming year. The AFLW Richmond and Geelong match that we spoke about at this last meeting was a terrific great day. It saw a crowd of over 5,000 people, and it was fortunate that it was scheduled when it was. And people poured in to watch Geelong prove to be too good for Richmond on the day. I look forward to more of these matches in Bendigo in the future, and it'll certainly act as an inspiration for our young women to kick a footy. And then also, the visit to the Lost Trades Fair was such a fantastic day out. How fortunate are we in Bendigo? With crowds of over 20,000, and again, the timing was very fortunate. It's poised to be a future success, even further than it was then. Some highlights for me included a most beautiful puppet from a sculptor, wood sculptor, Spoonsmith, also beautiful porcelain sauerkraut fermenting crocks, cheese-making talks, and an amazing astronomy cabinet with its rare inlaid woods and an internal solar system made by a craftsman, Christopher Scott. But perhaps the most special demonstration was the weaving demonstration by Gunwinher women from Arnhem Land. What a privilege it was to observe their craft, including creation of bush dyes for the pandana strips used for weaving their special products. We certainly are very, very lucky to be able to host this wonderful event, and certainly I'm looking forward to it in 2021. So as we look to the future, for many it's an anxious time. Indeed, with the COVID-19 pandemic, the world is changing rapidly around us. The nation's on a warlike footing, and with that comes innovation and resourcefulness. It's a challenge, but perhaps will provide opportunities to do things like reading and reflecting, participating in our online community activities, and the thing that I'm looking forward to most is getting out into the garden with more time to grow veggies. Social distancing and good hand hygiene in general is certainly the best option for us, despite the inconvenience it creates. So I hope the community in Bendigo stays well, and we will emerge to further what we love about our home in the future. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Oldham. Really thoughtful report. I think I did some coffee commitments about that Geelong Richmond game. I must call good on those. Thank you. We'll now keep moving through the agenda and declarations of conflict of interest. And I have something that I would like to raise. In relation to item 3.2, Catherine McCauley, so sorry I was saying about Golden Square Pool being 3.2, 3.3 that is, but 3.2, Catherine McCauley College, I declare no direct or indirect conflict of interest that would prevent me from participating in the debate or voting. I am, however, mindful that some might perceive or believe I have a personal interest in this matter, and that this will predetermine the issue in my mind, independent of the debate and not because of it. Let me assure you that as a sworn councillor, my duty is to the community as a whole, and I will put aside all personal interests and bias and determine the matter with responsible objectivity. And I just wanted to say that I have two daughters that go to CMC in Year 9 and Year 12. So with that, we move to confirmation of minutes. Thank you, Councillor Flack to move and Councillor Fife to second. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We have no petitions and joint letters that have been received, so we'll now move to item 2 in the agenda. And that is the Planning Scheme Amendment C232 for Strathfield's A Urban Design Framework Adoption of Amendment following a panel hearing. And there's been a recommendation that's been put forward by the officers. Do I have someone to move? Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Someone to second? Councillor Fife. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. The recommendation before us is that Council accept the late submissions and request the Minister for Planning to appoint an independent panel to consider the outstanding submissions. This is the next stage in the process to apply a development contribution plan overlay to the Huntley area. This plan seeks to apply a coordinated approach to the collection of levies to be used for infrastructure related to roads, intersections and shared parts. 6 submissions were received, including 2 late submissions. Of these 2, Of these, 2 were from affected landholders and 4 from authorities. Summaries of their submissions are outlined in the report. It's appropriate when there is an agreement between submitters and the Council that a panel be appointed to hear from each submitter, and I support this recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Fife.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Look, these planning processes, the planning scheme amendments and so on like that, do take a long time. They do involve a lot of community consultation, as Councillor Metcalfe has alluded to. And certainly there are times when we have people who don't agree with what is going on, and it is appropriate that it's heard by an independent panel. And I too would support this, because once we've got the independent panel, then we can accept or reject that as well. But more importantly, it gives everybody a fair chance before an independent umpire. So I support the recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Fife. Other councillors that would like to speak? No? Summing up, Councillor Metcalfe. Good. I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now move to item 2.2. Which is Planning Scheme Amendment C232, Strathfields A Urban Design Framework Adoption of Amendment following the panel hearing. I have someone to move. Thank you, Councillor Hawke, and seconded Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Hawke.
Thank you. I'd like to move the recommendation that the Council accept the panel's recommendation. Number 1, accept the panel's recommendation. Number 2, adopt Amendment C232 to the Greater Bendigo Planning Scheme with changes as recommended by the panel, and to make a minor further change to the proposed general residential zone on part of 528 Tannery Lane to align with further work completed since exhibition of the amendment. And then number 3, forward the adopted amendment to the Minister for Planning for approval, together with the prescribed information pursuant to Section 31(1) of the Planning and Environment Act 1987. So, as mentioned in the report, there are about 8 steps in this planning scheme amendment process, and what we're up to now is, with this recommendation, is step 7. So the whole process began, I think, back in October 2016. So there's been an enormous amount of time and effort taken to get to where we are today. Extensive community consultation and communication with the exhibition of the planning scheme, submissions submitted and reviewed, a panel hearing held, and further amendments then made. As stated in the report, this amendment has solid reasoning to back it up and brings together a number of pieces of previous work that had already been undertaken for Strathfields A. It introduces the first local area plan into the Greater Bendigo planning scheme, so it will make the planning scheme more usable and robust for the community, the developers and the city. The direction taken has been supported by the independent planning panel. So I recommend that Council adopt the amendment with the proposed changes and forward it to the Minister for Planning to approve, and in doing so, this will complete the amendment process. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Hawke. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. It's a long road sometimes before you get to an outcome, especially with local government. This urban design framework for the Strathfields A Town Centre was first released to the public on the 12th of October 2016, which was the final meeting of the previous council. It's taken until now to work through all the phases of the planning scheme amendment process, and if this recommendation is supported, it will be sent to the Planning Minister for approval and gazettal. There is a very detailed list of what the amendment covers in the report, and I won't reiterate these, but they will become evident in future planning applications that are received for this area. I'm sure the planners will be breathing a sigh of relief that this amendment is about to be finalised and included in the planning scheme. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe. Other councillors? Councillor Oldham.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Yes, as Councillor Hawke has said, this is the first local area plan for our planning scheme, and it's a significant achievement. With the implementation of the Strathfieldsay Urban Design Framework and the Strathfieldsay Township Plan, there was some concern expressed by some residents about the need for greater certainty regarding some aspects of vegetation management in such a rapidly growing township. And the proposed amendment strengthens local policy around the retention and establishment of native vegetation. And with the ambition to increase tree cover across Greater Bendigo, the new Greening Greater Bendigo strategy will also provide further opportunities to consider tree protection. Which of course will have a separate amendment process. But we look forward to the opportunities to protect and enhance the Strathfieldsay environment via changes such as these. We see in today's newspaper's opinion piece that as a rapidly growing city, we're on the cusp of getting things wrong when it comes to urban planning and design. The cost of sprawling community and the necessary infrastructure provision is front of mind for contemporary planners. This amendment will allow for good design outcomes. It will allow for neighbourhoods and small towns where people can readily access their daily needs and where there's real transport choice rather than relying on cars. So I support and accept the panel's recommendation and adoption of the amendment.
Thank you, Councillor Oldham. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Hawke in summing up. Thank you. With that, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carry. Item 2.3, 313 Napier Street, Bendigo, 2-lot subdivision of land, demolition of existing dwelling and a development of 2 dwellings. And there's a recommendation the officers have put forward. Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. And Councillor Imon to second. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. The recommendation is that pursuant to Section 61 of the Planning and Environment Act 1987, Council issue a notice of decision to refuse to grant a permit for 2-lot subdivision of land, demolition of existing dwelling and development of 2 dwellings at 330 Napier Street, Bendigo 3550 on the following grounds. 1. The development will adversely impact the significance and appearance of the heritage place, contrary to clauses 15.03-15, 21.08, 22.06, 43.01 of the Greater Bendigo Planning Scheme. 2. The proposal does not comply with clause 55.02-1, neighbourhood character objectives, and is inconsistent with the purposes of clause 32.08, general residential zone, which calls for new development to respect neighbourhood character. And 3, the proposal does not comply with the objectives of clauses 55.02-1, 55.03-1, 55.03-2, 55.04-1, 55.05-4, 55.05-5, 55.06-1 of the Greater Bendigo Planning Scheme. This proposal seeks to demolish the existing dwelling, subdivide into 2 lots and construct a dwelling on each lot. There is a consistent theme that emerges from the Planning Officer report on the proposal. Whilst the demolition of the existing non-contributory building is supported, the proposed design of the new dwellings is not considered complementary to the heritage and neighbourhood character requirements of the precinct. The objectives of the heritage policies seek to ensure that infill development and new buildings do not adversely affect the character or appearance of the heritage precinct and are visually recessive. Issues identified with this proposal include front and side setbacks and the height, scale and bulk of the proposed dwellings. Setback guidelines seek front setbacks that are consistent with adjoining contributory elements and side setbacks that are common within the precinct. The proposal seeks a ground floor setback of 4.54 metres for the Napier Street property, compared to the neighbouring property's front setback of 7.4 metres. It is suggested that as a minimum, the setback of the new dwelling should be no less than the 6.18 metres of the existing dwelling on site. Regarding height and scale, the City's Heritage Officer has raised concerns that the proposed setback of the upper floors is not sufficient to lessen their dominance within the streetscape, noting that there is still significant bulk at the upper level. This aspect is particularly important given the site's corner location. Guidelines around this aspect require an overall building height that should not dominate contributory buildings when viewed from both streets. The impact of the proposed 2-storey structure is considered most detrimental to the adjoining heritage building on Napier Street due to it being only 2 metres from the boundary and having a substantial roof form. The proposal is also assessed as inconsistent with several Res Code clauses. These are outlined within the report and essentially the issues relate to those already discussed. The applicant has contacted councillors and provided their perspective on the process involved in this application. Their frustration with the process is evident, and a response to councillors from the Planning Department addressing the issues that have been raised was received a short time ago. Council officers have concluded that the scale of the proposed development is disproportionate to the setting, with the upper storey being particularly concerning regarding the requirement to be visually recessive. It is this assessment that the applicant is in most disagreement with, feeling that this application has not been treated consistently with other developments in the area, also believing that the application is respectful of the heritage guidelines and most importantly did not attract any objections from neighbouring properties. Given the finality of granting a permit, I feel it is difficult for a councillor to ignore the advice and recommendations given by the heritage and planning officers in this instance, as the site's prominent location necessitates that any development must be appropriate. Should council move to refuse the permit, then further appeal avenues can be sought by the applicant, and it may be worthwhile that those be explored for this application.
Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Emon.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. A very comprehensive outline of the actual proposal from Councillor Metcalfe. Thank you. It is a very interesting street, driving past it again today. On Napier Street, you've got some beautiful mature old elms, and on Buller Street itself, you've got some mature ironbarks. On the southern side, you've got a nice old bluestone gutter. The building itself is non-contributory as a heritage item, but the big concern is the excessive bulk. This is always an interesting position for council to be navigating, as we do want infill, but we do want to protect and maintain our neighbourhood character, but also the heritage assets. There were requests from council to amend the plans so that the plan wouldn't actually dominate the streetscape. And it's this domination of the heritage assets that do exist in that street, and if you go for a drive down, you'll see some beautiful old Victorian weatherboards and some other contributing buildings as well that have been spent a bit of time and a bit of love and tenderness, and they do look absolutely fantastic. I've seen a lot of negotiations between the planning department and developers, and I think the outcomes when we work together are extraordinary and do ensure that these heritage precincts and the neighbourhood character are protected and preserved. But I think in this instance, a potential unwillingness to amend plans has certainly led to a decision where refusal is being recommended, and I do support the recommendation and the sentiments of Councillor Metcalfe. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Emon. Councillor Oldham.
Thanks, Mayor O'Rourke. This application meets a number of standards, but as Councillor Metcalfe has comprehensively outlined, the overall objectives of the planning scheme are not met. Despite private open space being fenced off, there's issues of concern, including the departure from and the lack of respect for the existing neighbourhood character by virtue of excessive bulk of the building, as Councillor Emont has pointed out. We try to accommodate the rate of growth that may decrease the overall livability of our city. The process we need is to be mindful not to endorse development for development's sake. The challenge is that areas that are highly accessible are also often the areas that have heritage and neighbourhood character values. These character values mean that higher density housing needs to be a very high design standard. According to the State Government Practice Note, Understanding Neighbourhood Character, an area's character can be described as the combination of the public and private realms. Every property, public place or piece of infrastructure makes a contribution, whether great or small. It's the cumulative impact of all these contributions that establishes neighbourhood character. Granted, there may be frustrations and perceptions of communication issues with many planning applications, but those things aside, we need to consider the character of the places we love and value. In this case, I support the recommendation for refusal.
Thanks, Councillor Oldham. Other councillors that would like to speak? Summing up, Councillor Metcalfe. Put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Now move to item 3, Wellbeing and Fairness, and 3.1 is the Community Engagement Policy Review of 2020, and we have a recommendation from the officers there. Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe, and seconded Councillor Oldham. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. The recommendation before us is that Council 1 approve the removal of the City of Greater Bendigo Community Engagement Policy 2016, and 2, approve and adopt the City of Greater Bendigo Community Engagement Policy 2020. In preparing to speak to this tonight, I reviewed the VARGO report on public participation and community engagement in the local government sector. It says, councils make decisions about a diverse range of community needs, and to cater for these needs, transparent and well-managed public participation can help better inform local government policies and their transaction into effective strategies, programs and projects. The real-life experiences of community stakeholders can make a valuable contribution to decision-making, and an open and deliberative process can enhance stakeholders' perception of the credibility of a decision. Regardless of the site of the project, we would expect to see documented evidence that councils have understood better practice principles when designing and implementing their public participation activities. The recommendations from the VARGO report were that all councils, 1, assess their public participation policies and associated resources against the International Association for Public Participation, IAP2, model, and update them as necessary and promote their use throughout the council. And 2, build monitoring, reporting and evaluation activities into their public participation activities. And 3, develop and document comprehensive public participation plans and their outcomes. State government legislation requires that local government must have a community engagement policy and community engagement principles. The draft policy before us has been through an extensive feedback process, and this community engagement policy complies with the state government requirements and the VARGO recommendations. Great work by Fiona. I hope the councillors at this table will support this work.
Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Oldham.
Thanks, Mayor O'Rourke. The Local Government Bill 2019 has just been passed by both houses of the Victorian Parliament, and in sections 55 and 56 it mandates local government authorities to have a community engagement policy and community engagement principles. The City of Greater Bendigo's community engagement policy of 2016 was due to be reviewed in 2018 but was delayed due to the introduction of the new Local Government Bill. To be honest, I was surprised that any authority that deals with the public would not have had one elsewhere. Council's review has taken into account, as we've heard, the Victorian Auditor-General's report on public participation and community engagement, the Department of Premier and Cabinet's draft public engagement framework, the Local Government Act of 1989 and the new Local Government Bill of 2019. In October 2019, in this place, we authorised the progression of the review and public consultation, and the review itself was an exercise in community engagement. The adoption of the policy will allow the community engagement guidelines and toolkit to be reviewed over the coming year, and community engagement policy and principles are required by law now to be in place by March 2021. Done well, when the community is provided the necessary information to form an opinion, they can influence part or all of the decision-making process. This is the essence of participatory democracy. By being transparent, providing clarity, consideration of inclusion, access and participation, by closing the loop and undertaking evaluation, local governments can maintain the best interests of their communities at heart. Is this not why we are here? I commend the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Oldham. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Amon.
Just briefly, Mayor O'Rourke, an interesting item for us to be discussing tonight as well. Look, I think even though the bill was moved by both houses of the State Parliament and ratified yesterday, that the City of Greater Bendigo was on the front foot and ensuring that our community engagement policies are up to date, are transparent and are accessible to the community. Like being a councillor, you're one vote amongst 9, and it doesn't necessarily mean, whilst your voice is heard, the outcome is necessarily going to reflect what you contribute. And community engagement can take a similar approach, that while we're genuine about wanting to listen to the broader community, there are times when maybe a single voice or a other voice may not necessarily make it into the final cut. And I think that is possibly the reality of living in a democracy as well. But the importance that we do have community engagement, we are genuine about our community engagement, and community engagement does drive a lot of the policies and strategies that we are delivering as a city. So I think this is a great outcome, and just to thank all the team in the organisation, and particularly now they're working out of their new digs, to continue to do the good work, and to Fiona Jemmett particularly, who's continuing to deliver great outcomes for the city. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Amon. Other councillors that would like to speak? No? Summing up, Councillor Metcalfe, I put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Our next item on the agenda is 3.2, which is the Catherine Macaulay College Joint Use Agreement. and there's an officer recommendation there on page 58. Do I have someone to move? Councillor Hawke, and seconded Councillor Fife. Thank you, Councillor Hawke.
Thank you. I'd like to move that the Council 1 agree to the joint development and use of sporting and community facilities between the City of Greater Bendigo and Mercy Education Limited at the Catherine McAuley College Coolock campus for the term of 35 years. 2, authorise the City of Greater Bendigo Chief Executive Officer to undertake the necessary administrative steps to enter into a joint user and development agreement with Mercy Education Limited and Macaulay Property Limited. 3, commit to funding 50% of the detailed design and construction costs of the joint use facilities up to a total of $7 million. 4, authorise council staff appointed to the Catherine McAuley College Construction Project Control Group to approve the variations to construction costs for the project within the agreed council funding commitment. And 5, commit council's 50% share of ongoing operational costs of the joint use areas. So again, we can see from this report that an awful lot of consultation and work has gone into ensuring that this will be a good outcome for the City of Greater Bendigo. With such a growing population, particularly in the Juniton and the Strathfield Sea area, we need more sporting and community facilities. So this joint user agreement assists the City in making such facilities more accessible for the whole community. Council's financial contribution to this venture, although sounding like an enormous amount of funds, will be spread across a number of years and is within budget. So risk factors have also been thoroughly assessed and reviewed, and I just think this will be a great project and one that I look forward to watching develop. Thanks.
Thank you, Councillor Hawke. Councillor Fife.
Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Hawke. Yes, this is the way of the future, where we will be having more and more joint use facilities because we can't provide all of the facilities that are needed, and certainly schools and other organisations like that which have great community impact, great community presence, they will not be able to fund it all either. So coming together, not only do we have a better outcome, but we can attract some extra synergies as well too. And in this instance, we've got the Northern District or Northern Rivers cricket team, and that is a way of us being able to say to young people interested in cricket, here is a pathway. Here you can get that specialist coaching, you can get that specialist work, just like the Academy of Sport and so on like that operates here in Bendigo. I think one of the exciting things about this is the fact that it is in a growing area. It is in an area that does need a lot more ovals, a lot more open space for sporting facilities, both passive and active recreational facilities. And certainly I think it's one that we should be exploring not only with the Catholic education system and the private education system, but also with the Victorian Government education system as well too. It does provide those facilities for the students during the day, community during the evening and the weekends. It does provide active use all the time so that there is less vandalism and so on like that. But more importantly, it stands there as a symbol of this is something that you can do to our young people. It says to them, you can become a cricket star, you can become a basketball star, a netball, whatever it is. And so I'm in favour of this. I think it's something that we should be working at. Yes, we will come across difficulties and so on like that. Yes, we will need to iron them out. But more importantly, I think as we go, we will learn from those mistakes and those little variances and make sure that the future ones will be even better. So I do commend this. I think it's a great step forward for both the community and for the college, and certainly for the Juniton area as well. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fife. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. I had a question at Saturday's listening post about why Council agrees to a joint development use of sporting and community facilities for schools. It's an easy one for me to answer. This allows Council to provide sporting facilities at a vastly reduced cost as opposed to doing it on our own, provides more infrastructure than either party could do on its own, Council doesn't have to purchase land to develop the sporting facilities, which would be an additional cost to Council, caps the Council's contribution, and Council has the opportunity to negotiate the length of the repayment plan. It provides sporting grounds in a growth area and makes use of an otherwise vacant space outside of school hours. These are all pluses for me, and ultimately the community is the winner here. The active living census shows that we have a shortage of cricket facilities in the City of Greater Bendigo, and this will help address this shortage. There are always learnings from each joint use agreement, and I believe this one reflects some of those earlier learnings. I'm very comfortable in supporting this recommendation.
Thanks very much, Councillor Metcalfe. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Amon.
Just briefly, Mayor O'Rourke, look, I think this is a wonderful opportunity for the city. We do have a number of different joint user agreements in place. Some are working successfully, others less than successfully. But I can take some comfort from the conversations and the briefings that we have had that this joint user agreement will be beneficial to the community. On paper, things can look wonderful and the benefits for community can appear fantastic, but it's when the rubber hits the road and stakeholders are having to negotiate or play nicely, dare I say, that we do see, are we actually benefiting as a community, as a 50-50, or are we sort of the second-rate citizens? But I think this one will have a tremendous outcome for the Eppalock ward and the City of Greater Bendigo, if not the broader region, given the state size and capacity of the facility. But look, like all our joint user agreements, good strong relationships, a commitment to community, and in this instance to education, I think we'll have a good outcome at the end of the day. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Amon. Other councillors that would like to speak? In summing up, Councillor Hawke. Good. Councillors, I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We now move to item 3.3 on the agenda, Golden Square Swimming Pool Council Report Fire Damage. And do I have a recommendation? Thank you, Councillor Amon. Someone just... sorry, say what it is, Councillor Amon. Thank you.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Look, I'd like to move that Council 1 notes the resolution from the February 2018 Ordinary Council meeting on the future of the Golden Square Swimming Pool, which includes that a decision on the future of the pool will be revisited in April 2020. 2. Note the requests for additional information and clarification that have been received from key stakeholders, including representatives from the Golden Square Pool Committee. And 3. Supports the deferral of consideration of the matter until June 2020 Ordinary Meeting of Council to enable further stakeholder engagement to be undertaken. Look, I think the motion... Sorry, that's the motion.
I have someone to move that. Thank you, Councillor Fife. Thank you. Now, Councillor Amon.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. I think the motion does state for itself, and from the questions this evening, the multiple emails that we've received over the last week, that a deferral is not something that Council does take lightly, and I think this is extraordinary circumstances that with our commitment to community engagement and the last genuine piece of joint user group engagement being May last year. I do note that the user groups have been meeting informally, and I do get a sense that all user groups do want to move towards a solution and look at some form of mutual benefit. So I think the motion is important. It is important that as a city that we do respect our stakeholders' needs and to ensure that the adequate amount of consultation is undertaken. I don't think I've read an email that was happy with the proposed recommendation in its previous form, and I do think the additional time will be important to ensure that we do bring the community along, if I might quote Councillor Williams, bring the community along to ensure that we can find a solid way forward. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Amon. Other councillors that would like to speak? Oh, sorry, Councillor Fife, seconding there. That's
all right. Happy to be overlooked. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you, Councillor Amon. Yes, I agree with this one. I think in this instance we do need to consider it a little more clearly, a little more time, and in a little bit more depth. And I have two reasons for that. One is the one that Councillor Amon has just articulated, and that is by continuing the dialogue, we can probably reach a better solution than what we can if we don't have any dialogue at all. And probably, although we've had dialogue so far, probably not at a sufficiently high and intense level so that a way forward can be mapped out readily. The other thing is that I have noticed, and among the particularly a presentation from the people from the pool committee, pool community, sorry, that there's a number of questions that they want clarification of, and I think that this process of deferring it will allow us to sort that out, communicate with them in a clear and concise way about what the questions are, what the meeting is, and certainly I think that from there we can get a better solution for them, for the cricket club, for the football club, and for the bowling and croquet fraternity. What we have is the cricket club saying that the pool decision needs everyone coming together and talking about it, and I think that we need to respect that community input, that even if it is here tonight, and we are here to take on board all of those comments right up to whenever we vote on this particular motion. And I think that that for me resonated particularly acutely, and I think that we should be taking this time for a little bit longer, a little bit more in-depth analysis, and I think we can probably get a better result. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Fife. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Oldham.
Thanks, Mayor O'Rourke. Poor communication has been the hallmark of this whole process, and the Golden Square community are the poorer for it. The fact that no party had seen the recommendation in the council agenda prior to its release to the public is very poor indeed. Lack of certainty at the end of the 2020 pool season is in part due to the absence of a promised comprehensive aquatic strategy meant to guide decision making for the pool by this time. But for some still unexplained reason, this strategy was not progressed as expected, and a draft has more recently been put together. It's clear it's not coming to us for approval in the near future. I believe this to be a big error of judgment on Council's behalf. The pool numbers at Golden Square have risen steadily since the opening of Guri Wanyara. Attendee numbers beyond expectations at Guri Wanyara are a great thing, despite the huge costs to the ratepayers that exist with such an energy guzzler. But the Golden Square pool continues to achieve for the community. In fact, this hard-working local group is a shining light that has achieved outstandingly, providing much-needed facilities for local families and our community. Some seek to question, diminish or discredit these achievements. I say they are a credit to all involved. Achievements such as a Swim Safe program with the Rod and Campaspe Multicultural Service, water aerobics, yoga and Zumba classes, the 4th largest outdoor Vic Swim program in the state, school swimming and other family-focused events, and a community garden, 85 volunteers, being recipients of the Volunteering Vic Innovation Award for Youth, being recipients of the 2019 Victorian Regional Achievement and Community Award, running a Fosterville Staff Wellbeing Program and having a new 4-year strategic plan. This community in general is being treated unfairly through the uncertainties of this whole process. It's been mentioned that some of the user groups have met frequently to discuss the master plan, but I believe that not all groups have been present at all times. Reading the dozens of letters of support for the pool over the last couple of days has been very moving. It's obviously highly valued by so many people. So where does that leave our decision making? It was an insurance claim for fire damage to some of the pool's storage areas that brought forward the decision about the pool's future by a month. I cannot support a deferral when I'm not confident that the required communication will achieve the results claimed by some. What I do know is that if there is to be a new recommendation in future, that it should be developed in conjunction with the pool and the pool only, and only after genuine communication.
Thanks, Councillor Oldham. Other councillors that would like to speak? Councillor Hawke.
I support the motion put forward tonight by Councillor Eamon, probably a little bit more selfishly actually, just because I too feel like I need a lot more information to make a really informed decision, particularly since I am playing catch-up, as I continue to do, only being elected since October last year. And I've heard a lot from the members of the Golden Square pool community and have welcomed some more recent contact from other stakeholders, which is good. I would like further time to consider the Golden Square Recreation Master Plan as well, as I actually didn't know about that until just earlier this year as well. So I'm a lot more comfortable with this recommendation put forward by Councillor Eamon, particularly because it allows me to make a really informed decision, which is what I want to do with all decisions on council. Thanks.
Thanks very much, Councillor Hawke. Other councillors, Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. I cannot support the recommendation that is printed in the agenda, nor the alternative one for deferral of the decision, so I will be abstaining from this vote. I hate making the decision to abstain from a vote, but both recommendations make me feel uneasy, and I will deal with these separately. Although the Golden Square Pool Committee may have initially been pleased to see approval was being given to extend the pool's operation for a further 4 years, the recommendation contained in the agenda is opaque and open to interpretation. Points B, C and D need clarification, and I have received multiple emails from the pool user community regarding this. I have no answers for the people contacting me, and if I feel my integrity is being compromised by this recommendation if I were to support it. That's something I'm not prepared to give away. The Golden Square Pool Committee members and users quite rightly picked up on the ease with which this pool could be closed should the recommendation as stated be carried. The alternative recommendation before us tonight to delay the decision for 3 months feels like a recommendation made on the run. There are consequences in delaying this decision that affect the Golden Square Pool community being able to get on with the jobs they do in the off-season, like applying for grant funding. You can't apply for grants if you don't know if the pool will be even open in the 2021 season. The deferral of consideration until the June 2020 Council meeting to enable further stakeholder engagement to be undertaken is the aspect of the recommendation I find most concerning. The decision made 2 years ago resolved to revisit the continuation of the Golden Square Pool in April 2020. Despite this, the Bendigo Aquatic Strategy and Golden Square Rec Reserve Master Plan, both documents that are required to inform councillors about future development decisions in this precinct, are not completed and available. Advice councillors have received is that it may be up to 4 years before these are completed, hence the original recommendation to continue the operation of the pool for a further 4 years. The Mayor also referred to the 4 years in a response to a question on Golden Square Pool that came up earlier in question time tonight. Other user groups in the area are understandably frustrated with the lack of progress of the Golden Square Rec Reserve Master Plan, as they too would like to see some certainty provided to their organisations about future development in the precinct. However, until these strategies are available, the issue I believe we are considering tonight is whether the pool is to continue, not to get user group input into the future of the precinct. That is a separate issue. I cannot reconcile the idea that we will suddenly have further information available to us for a decision in 3 months' time after waiting already for 2 years. Neither of them am I confident that any meetings between the various users of the precinct over the next 3 months might lead to an amicable outcome and solution for everyone involved, considering there's only been one meeting of the user groups in 10 months. In a time where the whole world is experiencing unprecedented fear and uncertainty, this recommendation only heightens those feelings for a community that I identified last month as living the values of the world's most livable community, something this council aspires this city to be. I apologised last month for not being able to give the pool committee a decision prior to the pool season finishing. I apologise again this month that I do not have the necessary information available to assist councillors in making decisions for this precinct 2 years on from the last decision. What I have now, I believe, is a nothing response on an emotive and important issue. The users of the Golden Square Pool and the users of the Rec Reserve have every right to be angry and
Councillor Metcalfe, you'll need an extension of time. Thank you. I have someone to second. Thanks, Councillor Alden. All those in favour? Against? Carried. Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you. The users of the Golden Square Pool and the users of the Rec Reserve have every right to be angry and disappointed with the situation they are now in. I cannot support either recommendation, but would support the decision being delayed from 1 month until April, in line with the original motion, the wishes of the Rec Reserve user groups, so that the clarification around the consequences of clauses B, C and D can be provided. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe. Other councillors that would like to speak? No? Councillor Amon in summing up.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Councillors have obviously stated their opinion. I think what my reason for running for council, as per this decision, it does reflect everything that I stand for, and that is genuinely listening to your community. A recommendation on the run, it's not. A recommendation in response to community need, community concern and community desire, it is. Some people have stated very clearly they can't support a deferral. I say a deferral is vital for all user groups and for the pool community to be able to sit down over a 3-month period and work their way through this process. I'm here for my community, and I think this recommendation to defer is a direct response from the needs of not one user group but from multiple user groups who are all unhappy. There's no magic fairy dust that's going to come up with a magic solution until people sit around a table and we all work through this together. We answer the questions, we provide clarity, and we seek a resolution. Now, nobody knows what that may look like until we get the user groups in the room. So I do strongly recommend to councillors that a deferral is important. It does enable all those questions to be answered in a timely manner, and it does so in a way that directly addresses community need. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Raymond. With that, the alternate motion, I put that motion. All those in favour? Against? And 1 abstain. Yep. Thank you. Division? So the division, those for Councillor Raymond, Councillor Flack, Councillor Fife, Councillor Hawke and Councillor O'Rourke. Against, Councillor Alden, and abstaining, Councillor Metcalfe. Thank you. Councillor Metcalfe and Alden, can I get you to just tilt your microphones a bit more so when you do speak it's not coming clear? That's right. So when you speak next time it's just not easy to hear. Thank you. We now move to item 4, strengthening the economy, and 4.1, which is the rail transport link, and there's an officer recommendation there on page 79. Do I have someone to move? Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe, and seconded Councillor Fife. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. The recommendation is 1, that Council adopt the core principle that any solutions for the future development of rail infrastructure and networks throughout Victoria, including the Melbourne Airport Rail Link, MAL, should not disadvantage the future growth and prosperity of the Greater Bendigo region, nor impact in a negative way Bendigo's ability to connect with and travel to and from this state's capital city. 2, advocate to both the state and Commonwealth governments the importance of both levels of government committing to a Melbourne Airport Rail Link that provides for world-class airport train connectivity, that takes pressure off congested rail networks, that improves regional rail services to the state's largest regional centres, that supports state and Commonwealth government policies to strengthen regional Australia, and positions Sunshine as the only stop on an express service between the airport and Melbourne. 3, advocate for further improvements to the Bendigo rail line, including duplication of the rail track between Bendigo and Kyneton, the Echuca line and the Swan Hill line to improve services for Northern Victoria to and from Melbourne. 4, write to the Prime Minister, the Premier, the Victorian Minister for Transport Infrastructure and the Commonwealth Minister for Infrastructure, Transport and Regional Development, advising Council's position. And 5, support the further development of the Bendigo Metro Rail project and the future upgrade to the Inglewood to Denali line when passenger and freight demand warrants such an upgrade. I was expecting Councillor Williams to be here to talk about trains, and I thought we would be asking for an extension of time. So what I have to say is actually quite light on. The 5 points are going to be longer. This recommendation highlights the high-level principles for the Council to support. I've taken the opportunity to speak with a mathematician and physicist who studies train timetables, train tracks and train bridges. He shared with me some of his learnings over the decades. These include the importance of standardising the gauges across the state, which half of the state already complies with this, and recreating the double track between Bendigo and Kyneton, which allows for a hugely improved service that is more regular, more frequent, more reliable, and most of the time much faster. Some of the timetables would have shown us that there haven't been improvements in train service over the last 20 years. I never thought in my role as a councillor that I would be looking at rail bridges and rail tracks and timetables, but it's been an interesting process, and I support this recommendation.
Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Fife.
Thank you, Mayor, and thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Yeah, I too was expecting Councillor Williams to go, and I was prepared to have 2 extensions and then no more. Nevertheless, here we are debating it, and it really is a very, very important concept that we are debating, and or indeed giving direction for our city. if we look at the purpose here on page 79, it says that it's important that the position for the city be clarified during a period where specific options and engineering solutions are being debated which may or may not be to the benefit of the Bendigo in the long term. And that, I think, is the crux of the 5 points that have been made in the recommendation. We do need to make sure that we are advocating for the best possible solution for our community, and indeed the community all the way up along the Calder, even beyond here in Bendigo. These, at the moment, we're looking at various individual options, individual engineering solutions, and certainly some of those are benefiting some communities and to the detriment of others, or at least not improving the lot of the rest of Victoria. So what we need to do is to make sure that we feed our information into the decision makers, feed our information into our community and our politicians so that they understand where we are coming from, why we're coming from that, and that is to make sure that our community is A, not disadvantaged, and B, promoted as being able to be a source of income for jobs and so on like that. Now, what we have here is something that we need to make sure that we pass it so that we can then go with surety to the decision makers in Canberra and also in Spring Street with a clear story, a clear message and a clear anticipation of what we want for our community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Fife. Other councillors that would like to speak? No? I'll put the motion. All those in favour? Against? Carried. We now move to item 7, Lead and Government for All, and the internal audit plan of 2019 to 23, and there's an officer recommendation on page 84. Thank you, Councillor Oldham, to move, and Councillor Metcalfe to second. Councillor Oldham.
Thanks, Mayor O'Rourke. I'd like to move the recommendation that Council, 1, on the recommendation of the Audit and Risk Committee, approve the internal audit plan for 2019 to 23. 2, approve for the Audit and Risk Committee to make non-material changes to the plan. And 3, note that the Audit and Risk Committee have endorsed the plan and committed to reviewing the plan annually. Council is required to have an internal audit plan approved by Council. In July 2019, AFS were appointed to undertake a review, and the initial internal audit plan focused on 2 areas of waste services and long-term financial planning. This has been followed by a risk assessment and development of a comprehensive draft internal audit plan for the next 4 years. We endorsed this draft at our February Audit and Risk Committee meeting. The waste management audit was completed last year and will result in a resource recovery and education strategy to support a range of decisions in future, including waste charges. With this strategy comes documentation of management process, enhanced financial reporting, internal monitoring and formalising of accountabilities, roles and responsibilities. Opportunities have been identified to strengthen the long-term financial planning of the City of Greater Bendigo, and that will enhance the long-term financial plan and devise a tool being able to guide budget decision-making and strategic initiatives as required, with long-term financial implications of decisions considered. The internal audit plan is based on what we currently know about risks that face the City. As we've seen from a range of events so far in 2020, this assessment may need to change over time to accommodate new events. Additional events, audits, may then need to be undertaken, and these may have budget consequences. Based on discussions to date regarding risk assessment, I'm in full support of the plan and its annual review.
Thank you very much, Councillor Oldham. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. The proposed internal audit program was reviewed by the Audit and Risk Committee at the meeting on the 20th of February, and one change was made to what was recommended by the auditor. It is a comprehensive program, and there's always more that could be done which the auditor identified. And I agree with Councillor Oldham that we may need to be flexible about what we look at with what we're facing at the moment. The February meeting was my first Audit and Risk Committee meeting, and the information provided by the auditor and the questions asked by the external members as well as councillors show to me that the committee members are doing their due diligence. This should be reassuring to the members of the community. I support the recommendation before us. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Metcalfe. Other councillors that would like to speak? No? Summing up, Councillor Oldham? Yeah. Thank you. With that, councillors, I put the motion. All those in favour, against, carried. We move now. We have record assemblies and we also have contracts. I'll move those together.
Move 7.2 and 7.3.
Thank you, Councillor Fife, and seconded Councillor Flack. No urgent business, no notice. Sorry? Oh, sorry, I'm jumping ahead, yeah. I put the motion. All those in favour, against, carried. Now, no urgent business, no notices of motion, councillors' report, and I'll start with Councillor Hawke.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Before I start, I'd just like to preface my report by saying that I actually wrote this over the weekend, like I usually do, getting ahead of the game with my work. So, and things have changed quite a lot since then. But in saying that, I'll forge ahead. So, since our last council meeting in February, I've attended 16 council-related meetings or events, despite some cancellations. I won't go into all of those, but just talk to a few. So a really great one that I attended was the opening of the Bendigo Yacht Club's new alfresco deck, in late February. And what a great venue. I hope the Yacht Club market and really advertise their deck in this venue more. It's a great place that you can come and sit, join, enjoy a drink and just take some views over Lake Eppalock. So I was invited to come back and have a go at sailing, which I will definitely follow up when things settle down a little bit. As mentioned also, I too attended the AFLW match at the QEO between Geelong and Richmond. I actually watched the match from the concrete stands around the edge of the oval so that I can enjoy the match with my daughter, who has just recently taken up football in the past year as well. So it was really great to actually be amongst the crowds and enjoy the atmosphere and rivalry between the teams. It was another brilliant event for Bendigo, celebrating women's sport, and obviously another event that we probably may not have for a little while, so it's good to savour that. Over the long weekend on the Saturday, I attended the opening and celebration of all the numerous Heathcote projects that have been completed in recent years. And this is a great opportunity for me to go out to the Heathcote Bush Market, which I'd missed out on earlier in the year because with the listen, we were going to have a listening post out there, but we got rained out. So it was great to spend some time and some money and at some in a few shops out there. So that was really good. It was really busy, couldn't believe it. It was great to just see so many people out and about. So outside of council this month, I also attended a National Early Years Summit in Melbourne. And bear with me with this one. This summit was dedicated to working towards improving the first 1,000 days of a child's life. So the first 1,000 days is from preconception to about 2 years of age, and research shows us that adverse childhood experiences during this time, including trauma, poverty, housing issues, poor nutrition and hydration, decreased exercise and play, lack of attachment and some back and forth interactions all lead to poorer outcomes for children. And these have long-lasting effects relating to education, employment and health. Now, when I wrote this, I wasn't thinking about the COVID-19, but that is going to be a trauma for some of our children to cope with, which we need to take into account. But I'm also raising this because I actually wanted to acknowledge that recently in council papers at a briefing there was reference to the first 1,000 days of life and the importance of the early years, which I think is really encouraging, and I'll continue to advocate and encourage and support this work on my time in council and hope to raise this issue within the Bendigo community as well. Because I think real change is only going to stem from community uprising, so to speak, and I do think this is an area that the City of Greater Bendigo can take a lead in, so we can build a stronger community for our families and children. And obviously, at this time as well, we need to be really mindful of really supporting our children and our youth and our families, so that we don't have too many really adverse effects from that. It's going to be difficult, but we all need to try. And lastly, I did speak last month about trying to juggle my time between council work, business and family, and needless to say, I probably haven't done as well as I would have liked in managing it these months. But after that meeting, it was really good to hear so many people acknowledge this struggle that we do have as councillors, and hear that the City of Greater Bendigo are committed to trying to make it a little easier for those who are in the workforce and those who do have families and family commitments to try and manage all the council obligations, as it would be great to continue to encourage more diversity on council in our next term. I'll leave it at that. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Councillor Hawke. Councillor Metcalfe.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. I'm busy typing away because I have to get it to Kay Williams just after this. I too will talk about the AFLW game here in Bendigo, and even though the outcome wasn't as I hoped, the game was great and the venue was outstanding. The crowd really appreciated the standard of the game, and this was highlighted in sports reports on various networks that night. Mayor O'Rourke mentioned about coffee bets on this game, but I'd just like to remind her there's still an outstanding coffee from when Eaglehawk beat Strathfield Say in the VFL Grand Final a few years ago, so I think we're even now. The Lost Trades Fair at the racecourse, and I agree with Councillor Olden about how lucky we are in having this event here, and on the weekend we had it on in light of what's happened since then. The Lost Trades was amazing, and the setup of the venue flowed really well. The venue itself looked fantastic, and a big thank you to the Bendigo Jockey Club for the work they must have done in getting the venue looking that good. It helped to have 2 inches of rain in the week before the Lost Trains weekend too. The weather was perfect that weekend, however, and I think any visitors to Bendigo would have gone away with a really favourable impression of the city. Last Friday night I was invited to speak with prospective councillors for Goldfield Shire at Maryborough in the Leading Excellence Maryborough 2020. I encouraged them to put their hands up to be a councillor. They had lots of questions to ask about what the role involved, and the feedback I received was they found this to be a useful session. I've been out at Gornong in the last month looking at grey water issues and possible solutions to these. Being out in the community is what I enjoy most about my role as a councillor. And I agree with Councillor Olden that our councillor reports in the coming months will be very light on. It was only last weekend that Councillor Williams and myself held a listening post at the Epsom supermarket, but it may have been the last one we have for a while. I encourage residents to continue to make contact with their councillors by phone or email if they want to speak to us. Thank you.
Thanks, Councillor Metcalfe. Councillor Flack.
Thanks, Mayor O'Rourke. I attended the Sports Star of the Year Awards out at the All Seasons, and it was quite a great night. Bendigo Bank gave councillors a morning tea on the Tuesday after we'd moved into their offices. I attended the Madison, as I always do, on a Saturday and a Sunday of a Labor weekend, and it was a fantastic sporting event. And last Saturday we did the Eppalock Ward meeting at Strathdale Park, despite the wind and the weather being so daunting. And that's it. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Flack. Councillor Fife.
Thought you'd missed me. Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Yeah, just a few I'd like to mention. A number of people have covered the others as well too, and it's great to see councillors turn up to these community events. The community do appreciate it very, very much indeed. I jogged along to Summer in the Parks at Kirinda Park. That was a terrific night. A small crowd, very appreciative, and gosh, the wind was a bit chilly, but we got there and everyone thoroughly enjoyed it. That Summer in the Park is something that so many people comment favourably on to me, and I think it's one that we need to make sure it keeps coming up year after year. Went to the Bendigo Symphony Orchestra program launch, and Councillor Imam did a terrific job in launching that. That is a very talented group, and certainly they do attract the Melbourne Symphony Orchestra and others to work with them, and so as a result it gives our young players an opportunity to work with some of the best musicians going around here in Victoria. Also attended the Welcome to the International Executive of the WISE International. It's a real honour that the International Executive, particularly the President who comes from South Australia, nominated Bendigo as the place where they would hold their meeting. And certainly they were a terrific bunch of people. and are really, really curious about Bendigo and how good it is. They spent the week here, which was really great. Next one is the Pony Club. Last weekend had their championships out here, or over the Labor Day weekend had their championships out at the showgrounds. What a magnificent sight that was, to see all of these young equine riders galloping around, trotting around, and just generally having the time of their life. Great weather, ground looks absolutely superb, and I pass on my thanks to the CEO and I think Debbie for the greenery that was put out on the Showgrounds Arena on behalf of council. Made it look just so special, and they really do appreciate that. Attended the Spanish Rockio Festival with you, Mayor O'Rourke. What a terrific afternoon that was, and yeah, what a shame we had to leave when the dancing just got started. So anyway, I'll leave that. Also, I attended the Culture Al McCann. Culture Al McCann, yeah, that's right. Last Sunday, and opened that. I spoke at it. A wonderful way of bringing people together, both performers from different cultures. We had a number of cultures, including a number of Australians sitting around the edge, and I was just absolutely staggered by one superb singer from South Sudan. Turns out she's just toured Australia, got 3 albums out, or CDs out for us to buy, lives here in Bendigo, and the kids go to school here in Bendigo. Lord help me, she needs promotion, and she is just so talented. I'll leave it at that. Thank you, Mayor.
Thanks very much, Councillor Fife. Councillor Emon.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Had the good fortune of speaking at the 1.6 Billion Ways to be Muslim exhibition, an exhibition inspired by street art and focused on breaking down stereotypes of what is it to be a Muslim Australian. And during the speech, just acknowledging Councillors Williams and Councillor Fife for the last term of council, and a fair and a good decision to make a better and a greater Bendigo in regards to the planning application for the Bendigo Mosque, and in the face of much opposition, being strong and making a firm decision. Our launch of the Bendigo Symphony Orchestra, a wonderful event, and orchestral music is a vital part of Bendigo's history. A lot of German migrants came over during the gold rush, and I can still remember finding an old violin frame at Geisler's block on Hargrave Street, where the All Seasons now stands. And old Mr Geisler apparently was quite renowned for making violins out of eucalypt and native timber as well, looking at the different resonances. But the orchestral program that the Bendigo Symphony Orchestra continue to pursue, the support of young artists, local composers, and also bringing in guest artists as well to help bolster up the capacity of that orchestra, must be admired. Unfortunately, I shared this information on the back of our current COVID-19 situation, and many of those concerts and events may not go ahead, but when the air does clear and there is the opportunity, supporting these local community groups becomes absolutely vital. It is definitely a time for us to be a gentler and a kinder community, and to look after each other, our neighbours, and to ensure that we're not knocking over the elderly or people that may have a disability in the pursuit of an item like toilet paper. It demeans us all as a community, so let's be a lot gentler. Bendigo is a great city, we are a good community, and I would really encourage all residents, ratepayers, citizens and visitors to honour who we are as a city and to pursue that with a vigour. Also had the good fortune, invited out to the Kangaroo Flat RSL, having a look at their preparations for Anzac Day, another unfortunately cancelled event. And also some security concerns they had, and some individual was stealing water from them, sneaking up in early hours of the morning and turning on their tap and taking away vast amounts of water. Very disappointing. Councillors have mentioned the Geelong-Richmond AFLW game. Delighted our little daughter Daisy, 3 months old, the first football match she's ever attended was a female football match, and there was a young girl in a Tigers top, and she had a tutu on a Tigers top and a long stem flower. And the ballet that ensued consisted of, I'm sure, a number of football moves and impromptu motions, and I thought, what an extraordinary point in history where young girls could go wherever they want. whether it be football, ballet, CEO or mayor, that the opportunities that do lay ahead, and we're definitely breaking that glass ceiling. It's wonderful. And as a new father, it gives me great comfort that all children, be they boy, girl, or identify in other ways, do have opportunities. Had an interesting time speaking to the students at Camp Hill Primary School, grade 5 and 6, about civics and local government. I asked them, if you were deputy mayor for a day, what would you do? Recycling was a big issue. That was a big issue on the minds of the students. More splash parks was another hot topic, and a zoo was hot on the heels. And a few of the more mature teachers remember the old White Hills Botanical Gardens and those interesting monkeys that used to throw all sorts of interesting things at people when they would visit. So zoos, sustainability and splash parks seem to be some of the top areas to consider. Look, I would just like also to acknowledge the extraordinary work of the new CEO at the Golden Dragon Museum, Hugo Leschen. Hugo's been in the job for under 2 months, I believe now, and he's proving to be an extraordinary contributor and not an easy job to step into given the cultural and the family legacy and the work that has been done and the substantial work that has been done over the years to ensure that Bendigo's Chinese community does have a strong presence. And I'm absolutely confident that Hugo will continue to enable us to grow and expand and share that cultural asset that we do have here in the city. So well done, Hugo. Unfortunately, that museum is closed at the moment due to the COVID-19. And just finally, catching up with Barry Johnson. Barry is very passionate about a project called Coach Check. Barry, amongst other things, comes from a martial arts background, but Barry has a genuine commitment to ensure that if a parent is taking a child to any sort of activity, that there is a process to ensure that the people that you do leave your children with are the sort of people you want to be leaving your children with, and that they have got, whether the qualifications, the working with children's and every other issue is actually being addressed. And look, I do salute him, having sort of spent a lot of time in the martial arts circuits as a younger bloke. And the Karate Kid is a great example. You've got all sorts who are teaching things to individuals, and to ensure that you've got the right person, the right coach, the right mentor sitting there guiding you. These sort of things can become wonderful life lessons that can carry you through a lifetime, or they can be a more destructive element. So I do salute Barry for his ongoing commitment to ensure that the activities our children are involved in are activities that are going to be productive and healthy and continue their growth. Apart from that, I'm sure our council reports will be a little bit shorter next time, but look, everyone keep safe, look after each other, and if you're desperate, there's a backyard hose that might be able to do some cleaning for you.
Thanks very much, Councillor Emon. Not quite sure where you're going with that, but we won't go there. Moving on to the Mayor's report, just a few items that I want to tick off that some have already mentioned. I attended and spoke at the sod turning of the Epsom Skate Park along with Councillor Metcalfe and Councillor Williams and Councillor Petherbridge. And it was so good to see the community coming together, and where that all started in the beginning, from a request into a budget discussion from a member of our community, Epsom, was really great. And that work is being undertaken at the moment, so it was a really good opportunity. And we had the state government involved as well, as they've put funding in also. Councillor Emond and myself attended the launch of the Project Compassion, Caritas, in the Hargraves Mill. It seems like a long time ago, doesn't it? Shrove Tuesday. That event has been happening in Bendigo for something like 22 years. I didn't realise with Project Compassion that our region is actually, I think, about the second nationally in terms of funding that it raises for the charities associated with Caritas. All the schools that are involved, and the organisers said that they wanted to pass on to council because they were the envy of all of their other colleagues in the work that they do enabling that event to take place in the Mall, and Karen and her team, Bernie in your directorate, and what they did in enabling that to happen, and lots of pancakes obviously being made, and school children with concerts and singing, and it really was a lovely session. Councillors also attended the youth council mayor, attended with the youth council mayor and deputy mayor elections. That night we came in here to the council chamber. We've got 9 new youth counsellors joining those that have remained with us. Obviously, some have made commitments for study and well, there was commitments for overseas study as well, but that's been changed. We got such great nominations, as we've spoken before, and we've got 2 people in Ryan and Billy who will be very admirable leaders of our youth council for this year. Hosted a mayoral welcome for the Lost Trades Fair, and both Councillor Metcalfe and Oldham have spoken about the Lost Trades Fair. Lisa and Glenn Rundell have really built that into such an event. To have 20,000 people visiting that out at the racecourse was brilliant, and again Terry Karamaludis and his team in enabling that to happen was just outstanding, and the feedback from people, stall holders from all over Australia and some international, and Lisa and Glenn, they couldn't have been happier, and the Jockey Club in the support that they have done there. Councillor Hawke also mentioned about the projects in Heathcote. Over the last 4 years, close to $4 million worth of projects. The public toilets, most used public toilets in City of Greater Bendigo as part of the toilet strategy, been replaced, the old ones have been knocked down. Works at the senior citizens with a new roof, the pedestrian bridge over the Chauncey Street, RSL amenities, so toilets in the RSL hall as well. The Bowls Club having some works done there. Berwick Reserve works being finished off as well. It's pretty amazing, and I have to say Advance Heathcote and the community out there with their community plan, they've worked really solidly over a number of years in advocating for the things that are important for the Heathcote community, our second largest township in the municipality, so I want to say well done to all of them. I laid a wreath at the St Darkin commemorative service last weekend. It's one of the most emotional services that I think the RSL do. There are so many, but again, an incredible speaker whose parents were actually part of the underground movement in St Darkin, and when you listen to what the people in those communities did and sacrificed for the POWs was outstanding. It was, again, as I said, a very memorable event. Lots of people have attended. It's the only memorial of such, I think, in Australia. So again, hats off to the RSL, to Peter and his team on the work that they do, and they do that all so well in how they remember our fallen, those who have served and those that continue to serve. Our citizenship ceremony attended by 55 new citizens. We did have some that weren't able to come. It was a reduced number, obviously, with the COVID-19. We did have a bit of a change in our protocols. It's a bit awkward when you're a shake your hand, touchy-feely type person, but remembering our social distancing, that still went ahead. They were very grateful that it went ahead because they know that that could have changed post-Monday as well. Again, everyone's doing lots of work. I was off Crook last week for a few days. Thank you to Councillor Zemon and Fife and others who stepped in to help out on commitments. The calendar's looking very quiet over the next couple of weeks as we all bunker down and do what we need to do for our community and for our family and friends. So with that, I'll hand over to the CEO.
Thank you, Mayor O'Rourke. Can I just also mention the Local Government Act, which went through the State Government Parliament this week and was passed by State Government, awaiting royal assent of course now, but that'll be a pretty significant change for local government in Victoria. We look forward to the guidance that will be provided by Local Government Victoria and the State Government as to the introduction of that and what the changes will be, particularly in the lead up to the election later this year. Speaking of which, we had our first candidate information session early last week. The Honourable Bob Cameron and the Honourable Jeanette Powell were our guest speakers, and they did a great job talking about the relationship between state and local government and the importance of local government, the importance of being a good councillor and being a good council. So it was well received. We'll have to give some due consideration to how we might hold those future candidate information sessions going forward. I would just like to focus the rest of my report on the current circumstances around COVID-19 and the processes that we're going through to respond to council and community needs. Clearly the federal and state governments are leads in this pandemic, and they are setting the rules based on the best evidence and advice that they are able to receive. There are no doubts that the health of all community members is paramount in all decision making on this matter. And we've made some public announcements this week about how we've had to change our work. You've all talked about the events that you've been to over the last month, and we're all disappointed that there won't be many events over the next month going forward in terms of the things that we do so well in Bendigo, in Greater Bendigo, and how we love our events. They unfortunately aren't going to be able to be held, and you know the ones that I refer to in terms of the Easter Festival, the Riders Festival, Groove in the Moose being cancelled, the Bendigo Venues and Events program's been cancelled. So we don't know really the impact of that yet. It's going to be challenging for us as an organisation, but for our community as well. In preparing our current and future decisions, we've been using the following principles, and I'd just like to walk our way through those if I may. Primary to that is decreasing the risk of cross-infection, flattening the curve, we're calling it, and it's been referred to at state and federal level. Reducing the likelihood of the COVID-19 pandemic and its impact on our community. So supporting social distancing, we're practicing that tonight, strengthening infection control and making sure that we do wash our hands a lot, we do make sure that we respect others and increase our hygiene as best we can, and limit interactions with others. And that's one of the things that we're challenged by the most, I think, because we are sociable people, is to limit those interactions. We want to rely on evidence-based facts. We want to make sure we've got the best information available before we make decisions. We're aligning our decisions with our culture, and one of the significant parts of our culture in our organisation is we care. We care for each other as an organisation, we care strongly for our community. We want to focus our effort on maintaining services to the community wherever we possibly can, and in particular supporting the vulnerable people in our community. And we also want to think about decreasing the impact on the economy in the decisions that we make, and making sure that wherever possible we're helping the economy continue to operate. Vicky Mason has been appointed within our organisation as a pandemic coordinator, and that will be her full-time role for the period of time. So, you know, we're taking this very seriously as an organisation. We want to make sure we're across the detail and making decisions in a very timely way. Meetings are being held daily within our organisation and with others across Greater Bendigo, making sure that information is shared, and we'll be trying to do that again within our organisation and with the community as best we can. We're trying to understand the impact on community and economy, on health and wellbeing, and again we don't understand all of that yet, but we'll do our best to get our head around that and to make sure we stay abreast of that, and clearly staying closely connected to the likes of Bendigo Health, DHHS and others. It's clearly a time for strong leadership across Greater Bendigo, and there are many leaders in Greater Bendigo stepping up in their leadership to do the best they can to tackle this significant challenge. And I think today's meeting, Mayor, was a good example of some key people coming together to start to think about how we can work together. And I'd like to recognise the role that our organisation's playing in this work, and thanks to Vicky and others, many people in our organisation are working hard to try and make sure we're as best prepared as we can be. Like others, I ask that we all work together, we respect each other's needs, rights and responsibilities in this area, but most of all, and like others have said tonight, let's try and support each other through this challenge that will be in front of us for a little while. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Craig. I now move for the meeting to close as we have confidential reports to consider. So
move the recommendation.
Thank you, Councillor Five, and seconded Councillor Flack. All those in favour? Against? Carried.